conversation on direct impact. We have Mary with us today. We're going to have a candid conversation about resistance training. And if you're an athlete or you're somebody who, uses resistance training as a way to build muscle, and tone and become fit, like that's kind of what we're talking about. What we're talking about it mentally and psychologically. Like, how can we use resistance to tone and to grow and to build resilience? So, welcome, Mary.
Thank you. It's good to be here with all of our direct impact listeners and having a conversation.
Yeah. So, Mary, you're a psychotherapist, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I try. At least I think I am.
Last I checked, you were licensed to provide therapy in Georgia, so that's good. Tell me about when we use the word resistance. What comes up for you when we're talking about emotional resistance?
I think a lot of the times, like, I think of my populations that I serve, like teens, young adults, mostly teens. Resistance is that I don't want to be here. I don't like this. This is weird. Maybe mom and dad are making me do this. And then I think with my young adults, like, especially if they're going through addictions or any big change, it's that same thing of, I like my comfortable chaos and I don't want to leave it. It's such a safe haven to be in this space. But I love it because I get to push just a little bit, even if they like to push me back,
Yeah, right there. That's like the value of therapy, is we as therapists know how to recognize and respect resistance and use that in someone's favor, use that towards their recovery process. But a lot of our listeners, a lot of people out there, they're not engaged in therapy. And so how do we, as human beings, start to recognize our resistance and use that, as a way to grow?
I think, like, what I see, even in myself, is when we start to feel like doubting of ourselves. I think self-doubt is a big indicator. And even like that nervousness or anxiety to try. Because I think, like, in my own personal experience, like doing something I've never done or going out and doing something on my own, there's so much resistance on my end. And I kind of question that, because then I'm like, I come up with some excuses of like, well, I could do this, I could just stay home, I need to rest, even though it's an activity I'd like to do. And pushing to do that has been, like, I think one event I went to, it was very exciting, but also nerve-wracking, but I did it.
But you did it.
Yeah.
And how did it feel to do it?
It felt great afterwards. Like, afterwards, it was like I conquered a big fear.
Keyword afterwards.
Exactly, afterwards.
Yes.
During was a little, again, nerve-wracking, but it was okay. I felt a little safe in myself to say, hey, it's okay, you can do this. Nobody's, like, judging you. It's fine. But I think that resistance and that fear is so big for a lot of us that we don't do it, you know?
So one of the things I think I heard you say, and it's so important for us to pause on, is spending enough time with yourself to realize what your comfortable chaos looks like and feels like, or what that resistance really looks and feels like interpersonally. Mine is not as much that type of anxiety or fear, but it's more of a procrastination. Like you said, it's like I could think of 10 other things that I could do. All of a sudden, organizing my closet sounds like wonderful.
Like the best idea.
And when crazy thoughts like that come up, I'm like, what am I avoiding? And I don't even know it sometimes in the moment, but I know since all of a sudden my closet sounded like a good idea, something's happening in me that I'm resisting, that I'm avoiding. And it's hard to choose to do the uphill behavior because it's a new behavior. It's something that we don't have a lot of networks in place, neurological networks in place that says, oh yeah, I can do that. I've done that 1,000 times. So I definitely see it. Well, I mean, of course we see it in young people because they haven't experienced a lot yet. But there is that, faulty thought process that says I should already know these things. And that's completely untrue. And so it becomes even more important to lean into that resistance and challenge yourself and say, why exactly should I know how to do something I've never done before?
No, I love that one because that's even, like, I'll say my older adults that I work with, I just look at them straight, like, and I challenge them. I'm like, who said you had to do that? At X age, we should know this. Even like, again, I go back to my young adults or teens. I'm like, who said you needed to know this at 14, 23, 57? I don't know. Like, nobody set these rules for us, but there's this big assumption. I don't know if it's societal or pressure from family, whatever we experience, that says you should know. You have to know all this. And what gets me too is like when I hear, well, I wasn't really taught that, but people are telling me, well, you need to do this. And I'm like, well, how are we supposed to know if we're not taught this?
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something we wrestle with as a society on a whole, is this false narrative that we should know, or we should just be able to do something right the first time without multiple mistakes that have to go into a learning process.
Exactly.
So challenging ourselves and really paying attention to that narrative and that internal dialogue that limits you. It keeps you from growing and expanding and making all the necessary wonderful mistakes that we need to make to grow.
No, I agree. And I think it also goes to like perfectionistic tendencies too, like that we all see or experience, that again, that fear of, I don't want to try this because what if I fail and then people make fun of me? I need to be good at this the first time, kind of thing. And I'm like, why? Again, who said that you had to?
Yeah, and like we say, like, perfect is the enemy of good. Good enough is a thing.
Yeah.
You know, trying is good enough. And so much value in mistakes. So I say, fail forward, fail as many times as you need to. But, you know, people have that artificial sense of they should feel confident about things they've never done. No one does. Competence comes before confidence. And we have to be willing to build a competency around something. So that requires pushing ourselves. Yeah.
So then I guess a good question that maybe somebody has out there and that's coming up for me too is how do we cultivate that, you know, sense of wanting to try, like especially therapy for us as therapists? How does somebody like, okay, let me jump the gun, you know, like let me go see somebody or let me try this one thing, to say, let me just take this first step?
Well, you know, what comes up for me is the why. You know, if there is a purpose, if there is a why, if there is a motivating factor driving, you know, the thought, I'd like to try this, you know, use that to your advantage. Really, like, lean into why you think this would be an activity that supports your self-discovery and your growth and just learning who you are, because that process can be a really fun process. And I think that's part of what therapy can do when you work past a lot of that initial and very natural resistance. I feel like it is natural for us to resist change. And we definitely can't fault ourselves for it, but that's what we're talking about, is because like everyone will experience that. Probably if you're noticing it, if you're being honest with yourself, if you're listening to this, you might go through the day and really start to pay attention. And it's probably going to be 10 times today that you're like, oh my gosh, I felt that resistance. How can I learn to push through resistance so that I can tone, so that I can grow, so that I can strengthen, you know, and become a more resilient and tolerant human being? Because if we don't, you know, get out of our comfort zone, our world becomes really small.
Yeah.
And that's really unhealthy mentally, you know.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, because I know, like, for a lot of people, it's kind of one of those things that's, I want to do this. It's an idea, but I'm very fearful of it. And I like that you mentioned natural, because it is natural for us to be resistant. And I think when we have a client that's sitting in front of us, there's a pressure of, or at least I've seen it, that I need to be good at therapy, or I need to make progress in therapy. Like, I should be at 0.5 when I'm still at 1. And there's that frustration. And I always have to face it. I'm like, again, who said this? Why can't we just be happy that you're sitting here today and not focusing on where I should be, you know?
Yeah. And that's part of the challenge too, is really sitting in the now and being still and being present and not being light years away where all of the stress and all the fear and the anxiety lives. It all lives in the future because you're not there yet. I mean, you're not there yet. Sit still, be present, be, able to give yourself grace and be grateful that you're there and you've got air in your lungs and you've got a therapist who really wants to be with you, sit with you, challenge you, listen to you, and my goodness, just getting there. And for the people who actually shower before they leave to go to therapy, wow. I can't tell you just how many people are like, this is the day that I shower and like I feel like $1,000,000 just because I showered to come in here. So when I leave, it's like, wow, I feel 200% better. So yeah, but it is, something to push and challenge. And I think therapy pushes and challenges people for sure.
I definitely agree on that, because we are looking at so many ways of how different aspects of our life impact us. Like I was talking with somebody, like I have to look at even your socioeconomic status, finances, daily stressors, what goes on, because that impacts you as a human being, and I can't take that out of the equation. Like even showering, I think we take that for granted, like it's a daily routine, but for some people that's so anxiety producing. That's such a tough thing because we're deep in our depression or whatever is going on.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the thing we need to be grateful for. Like I have running water to take, a bath.
And again, I go back to self-compassion where it's like, do you realize how many steps and task initiation opportunities you have when you shower? It literally is almost 300 steps you were taking. I'm going to take my towel off. I'm going to throw it over the door. I'm going to step into the shower. I'm going to turn the nozzle. And if you are in trauma or you have had just a lot going on, if you're in a depression, that is exhausting. And I really want people to understand, like, the benefits of counseling and just understanding timing too. Like, when is a good time to challenge myself on the bigger things when I'm in the midst of, so much distress and trauma and all of that.
No, I agree, because even like I go back to like clients wanting to be good at therapy, it's like, oh, I need to tackle the big stuff now. But it's like, sure, we can get there, but we have to do the smaller steps to make the bigger steps,
So a lot of it too, and I'm glad that we mentioned this, is building that firm foundation, that solid ground for actual building blocks to, make a difference. And I think that firm foundation is required really in order just to start to recognize and challenge and push and use resistance to benefit you.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this
thank you
candid
so
conversation. Thank you guys for showing up. And if this was useful to you, please do share it with a friend, a loved one, a family member, a group member. We really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Bye for now.